Today's show is brought to you by Milwaukee-based Spike Brewing, designer and manufacturer of premium quality home brewing equipment. Is your beer falling flat? Are you sick of setting up all that gear for a brew day and running out to buy propane? Frustrated by the weather dictating your brewing schedule? Take it inside and avoid the cold, wet winter with the turnkey electric system from Spike Brewing. Trusted by homebrewers and pros alike, the Spike system will change the way you brew and take your beer to new heights. And whether you're interested in a simple upgrade from a glass carboy to a stainless steel fermenter, or you're switching from propane to electric, Spike Brewing has the solution for you. Reach out today to spikebrewing.com/homebrew happy hour, and their team can help you figure out what you need to make the most of your brew day. Spike Brewing. Pursue what's possible.
Entertaining shows with content that spreads information and sparks discourse throughout the community. This is the Pearl Media Network.
Hello and welcome to the Homebrew Happy Hour. This is the show where we supply the answers to your homebrewing questions and discuss all things related to craft beer. If you have a question you would like us to discuss on a future episode, you can go to homebrewhappyhour.com and click on the submit a question link at the top of the page, or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. I am your host, Joshua Stubing. Today I am joined by the Director of Operations at cmbecker.com, Mr. James Carlson, as well as the President and Chief Keg Washer, and his name is labeled correctly finally in Zoom conferencing. It doesn't say Joe. It's Todd Burns. Guys,
hey, look at that.
Yeah, I noticed that the other day.
Did you?
He doesn't look like a Joe.
He doesn't look like a Joe to me. A listener, or a viewer rather, I guess I could say. I don't do a good enough job distinguishing. When I say listener, I mean our audience, but I forget that our YouTube channel is growing tremendously, and a lot of people are consuming it that way. And a guy who watches the show was like, hey, that wasn't Joe on. And I was like, yeah, obviously, duh. And he was like, no, it looked in the corner. And oh, it said Joe. And and I should have known better, because sometimes I do the labeling and Todd sometimes does the labeling. Like one time, Todd put weight loss champion down there, and a viewer noticed that and told me. So I'm glad y'all pay attention to the little things. I don't know where this show would be without that critical feedback. But anyways, gentlemen, I appreciate having y'all on. It's been a fun, good weathered week here in Austin. A whole lot is going on, a lot we can talk about, and some stuff is just mundane and even more boring than the usual small talk that I bring on the show. So let's, what we will start off with is not boring or mundane, in my opinion. We just published the first episode of our new series, weekly show called Recipe Recap and Review. We did the first episode on a fat tire clone that James brewed, and members of our Patreon can access it right now through your Patreon inbox at patreon.com/homebrew happy hour. It will be available to everybody this coming Tuesday. It's going to be a Tuesday series, so we'll start releasing our shows on Tuesdays and Thursdays. What is Tuesday? Is that the 3rd? Yes.
It is. Yep.
So Tuesday, March 3rd, everyone will be able to get it. By the end of today, during our live Q&A yesterday, Todd, I said, oh, the second episode we did will be available now. It wasn't available. And when I went to go edit it, my computer had some rendering issues, but it will be up today. That's all been resolved. But I had a blast doing that show. I don't want to put words in y'all's mouths, but James, wasn't that some of the most fun we've had in a while?
Oh, yeah. The review?
Yeah,
it
was fun.
And Todd, we, it's up your alley because it's 15 minutes or less. Like both episodes happen to be right at the 15-minute mark. Up your alley. Up.
Oh, okay.
Up your alley. Sometimes I mutter, and you don't normally like when you don't know why people stick around for this show if it goes over 5 minutes. And whenever we got some feedback about the small talk portion, you're like, I get their point, man. I get their point. So the recipe show, no small talk. It was nothing. Nope. Straight to business.
Business. I like business.
Business.
Yeah, it was fun too.
It was
we get to drink beer.
Yeah, I was going to say we're at the ranch.
We're doing it again this Monday, right?
We are doing it again this Monday, and we're at the ranch. recording 2 episodes of every other Monday when I'm up there. We hit 2 episodes, and that's not the only beer we're drinking while we're up there. So the episodes are a good lubricant to a good evening at the barn. And barn, again, in air quotations, James understands.
Yeah.
And we actually were able to determine that we can only record 2. We can't do 3 episodes.
We did. You're right. And I actually,
The third one would be bad.
I know James is the man, the voice of reason. I hit him up yesterday to make sure, hey, can you be there on Monday? And we're gonna do an episode with Joe as well. And I was like, but we could totally knock out 3. And he was like, can we though?
It would be like drunk. Have you ever seen Drunk History? It would be like that.
Yeah, exactly. Except we have no useful information once we're inebriated. It's just
Right, exactly.
And there's other shows that fulfill that. So if y'all need that in your life, there's other shows that fulfill that. But
It's not us.
yeah, it's not us. Maybe our third show when our Patreon gets to like 200 members, that'll be it. We'll do not drunk history, but drunk something.
I think there's actually some other podcasts out there in our industry that do that, but we won't mention any names.
Yeah,
There's several, I think.
None names. Yeah. And I do want to say this because a lot of people who are consuming this right now are not, if you're not a member of our Patreon, I will tell you for a fact, God's promise, there is no drinking noises on the mic. Like I made sure to make it clear, guys, no one wants to hear us slurping on drinks. Like we're very cognizant of the only thing making it to the mic is our voices. I think that's what I remember, but it's a little hazy.
I may have inadvertently slurped once or twice, and I apologize ahead of time.
That's just how you drink. Yeah, that's like you that's your etiquette. But yes, so the new show that is beginning Tuesday, March the 3rd for everybody. The first 2 episodes are available if you're a member of Patreon. Again, at patreon.com/homebrew happy hour. A little quick update on some of our other Patreon stuff, and then we'll get right back into the show. We did our live Q&A with Michael Ferguson yesterday. Todd and I had a great time. If you're not familiar with Michael Ferguson, it's worth checking out, especially if you're a member of Patreon. You can go watch it right now, and that's a good time right now for me to... Todd and I talked, and he asked me, hey, why aren't these episodes available for everybody to watch? And I said, oh, well, it's a perk of being in the Patreon group and blah, 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 blah. And he was like, yeah, but these shows have been, like, these Q&As have been going good. I don't know if y'all particularly have watched them yet, because, well, James, you don't do Facebook, so you haven't seen them, and I haven't sent you the video. Todd, I don't know if you watched the one I did with Lorena Evans.
I guess maybe I haven't paid my dues, but I don't have access to Patreon.
No, it's not Patreon. You would watch it on our Facebook private group. I've added it to you, the Homebrew Happy Hour Super Duper Secret Club. Come on, I showed you the handshake. Like you're a part of it, and I've told James you could be a part of it too. But Facebook is the devil. But
It is.
But anyway, so Todd was like, well, here's the compromise that we've come to. He said, why don't we publish it, or we make it a perk for Patreon. If you want to participate, ask questions to these industry pros, you have to be a member of the Patreon at any level, and then we'll publish it a week later or 2 weeks later, and then everybody can consume it then. So I think that that's a happy medium compromise.
You can participate, but you can't consume. And who wants to participate without consuming, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, and you can. If you're not a member of the Patreon, you can consume but not participate. The opposite, right? I think.
Oh yeah, you're right. It is the opposite.
I don't not mean to brain fart you there for a second, but I think it'll be a win-win because I'm very proud actually of how these Q&As have been going. Our audience is a smart bunch. They've been asking really good questions. The pros that we've had on have been. I mean, we are fortunate, guys, that we are a fraction of the size of some other, not just podcasts, but like retailers or whatever in our space. And I'm proud of who we're getting on the show. Lorena Evans is as good a pro as you can get. Jason Chalifer from Muntins, Ryan Otston with Spike getting his expertise. And then obviously Michael Ferguson, who is just, all I had to do was text him and he was like, of course I'll do it. So we're very fortunate.
Such a fun guy too. It's so much fun to do a show with him.
So much
fun.
To
hang out. HomebrewCon is totally
different
experience with him around.
Unfortunately,
and Lorena, I love walking through down the floor with Lorena. You get to meet every person that you've every person that's kind of a celebrity in home brewing, Lorena, they know Lorena and she knows them.
Yeah, you're right. And she will say them. I mean, her sense of humor is right up our alley.
It is.
Yeah.
And so is Michael's. Yeah.
And so is Michael's. That's why I think we all get along so well. Yeah. I was
Dry
bummed.
and perverse, right?
Yeah, I was I was really bummed to hear that Michael is not attending HomebrewCon this year, but yeah.
He said he wasn't speaking. I was meant to clarify if he was maybe going to attend but not speak.
No. Remember, he said, I mean, it was very heavily implied that he said, when I have a company to pay for it, I'm there. But I'm not going to crowdsource and get myself there because he has other shows that he's attending. He's a sci-fi writer now, James.
Wow.
And so
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so he's going to a sci-fi convention and doing that, I think, in lieu of Todd. That's what I got. But I was paying attention during the Q&A. I don't know what you were doing.
Yeah, and I'd talked to you guys about maybe doing there's a drag race in the Rocky Mountain drag race schedule, and that's right smack dab in the middle of HomebrewCon. So I had to tell Wayne, can't do that this year.
Oh, I didn't know that the scheduling did conflict.
It did. Right in the middle of it's a 5-day drag race schedule, and we were in the process of putting a car together for that this year. And I looked it up, and when they did release the dates, I said, nope, I can't go. We can't participate because I got HomebrewCon.
Well, I had last year, my cousin got married, or it was 2 years ago, and I told her, sorry, I can't go. HomebrewCon is more important.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Kat. It looked like a lovely wedding. My kids were there. It worked out. I was represented. But anyway, real quick before we get to the show, our monthly giveaway for the month of February was a $50 gift card to Homebrew Supply. We did the drawing before the show, and the winner from our Patreon giveaway is Billy Bellavance. Congratulations, Billy. Yay. You're the winner. I will email you as soon as we're done doing this. I guess I could have done the drawing on the show, not before we started recording, and y'all hopped on the call. Maybe they'd believe me more. Or if I kept pulling out like my name, then people would get suspicious.
Or Todd's or mine.
Look, the winner is Todd Burns. Oh, the $50 gift card to Todd. Yay. But yes, again, I'm so sales pitchy this today. If you're part of our Patreon, we do a monthly giveaway as well. Random stuff given from show sponsors and vendors. And next month, I'm working on a great giveaway. I'm also working on a great guest for our Q&A. When I get that finalized, I'll announce it because I've been known to announce things prematurely and then they fall through. And then I look stupid. And I'm no stranger to that, but I don't like how it makes me feel. So, all that out of the way, we have a great show for you. We got 3 questions. Again, y'all have asked for more content, more questions, so we've been bringing 3 to every show as much as possible, starting with question number 1, who came from Joseph, who used the submission form at homebrewhappyhour.com. Joseph wrote, if I am using the same faucet to pour different beers and different beverages from, how often should I be cleaning the hose and faucet? I plan on using one faucet on a future kegerator build to pour alternative drinks like soda pop and hard seltzer. Joseph, that's a great question. Todd, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're going to say every 2 weeks, or what was the ridiculous answer that you've given before?
I clean my lines every 2 weeks or sooner and rarely miss the schedule. I mean, I cleaned my lines last weekend, all of them.
I believe you. I need you to take. You have an Instagram now. You need to document it on your Instagram every time you do it. Okay.
Tired of watching it. Tired of watching it.
No, you say that.
Well, I would say clean them after if you're switching to a different product, I'd definitely clean them.
Yeah.
And that's what I was going to ask for a specific, because like if, let's say, my household, when I had the kegerator here, I was going through the sparkling water, a 5-gallon, weekly. I mean, I was drinking it a lot, and it was just me pouring it, but I was drinking damn near a gallon a day, and over 7 days, I'd have to, Sunday was basically the day I know I'm going to re-keg 5 gallons of water. If I had switched it, now that I'm doing like what you see back here, now that I'm doing kombucha, especially a drink like kombucha, I would feel like I'd need to clean the lines out just because of like not hard seltzer, pardon me. I was just doing normal sparkling water. Leaves no residue behind. It's fairly benign. I could have immediately.
It's water. Yeah.
It's water.
You don't have any additives in it. And it's water.
That's what I mean. So, but if I was switching from kombucha to water again, or kombucha to soda, there's going to be a lot of stuff left over if I don't clean those lines, right? That's the issue. Would be flavoring, or would it be bacterial? All of the above? What are the main issues?
Yeah, it'd be all of the above.
So I would, and then for the faucet, the same thing, Todd. You say clean your lines, and I know we've gone over it before. When you clean your lines, you also disassemble every faucet and clean them out at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the process. So I run the solution through the line for really warm brew clean. And I'm basically filling up a bucket as I'm doing that. When the bucket's filled up, I take all the faucets out, disassemble it, throw them in the bucket, and then I just walk away. And I may leave it for an hour or more. I may leave it 15 minutes if I'm in a hurry. And then when I'm done, I come back, I put the faucets back on, I run more brew clean through and kind of empty out the keg of whatever brew clean it has in it, fill the keg full of fresh water, and then I run fresh water through it. Now, if you're using our beer line cleaning kit, you would do basically the same thing, except instead of running it from a keg, you just take the what I call the IV bottle. It's just a gravity-fed system, and you would just do the same thing except in reverse. So you're actually taking the faucet off first, running it down to you've taken your disconnect off, and you're running it into the bucket there, and you put your bucket, puts the faucet in there.
We have an old video of you doing it that I've been telling you, or we've been meaning to update it, just because it was fat Todd back then. We don't want that video.
He's coming back.
Oh,
He's coming back
in a big way.
I told you before.
In a big way.
Oh, that's perfect, James. I told him before we started recording, I'm a pound heavier than I was when we started the weight loss challenge. I put all the weight back on, man. It was I think I was eating in depression.
It's time to do the contest again.
I know. Oh yeah,
you're rematch. Yeah, the great rematch.
The rematch. Shut up. I'm never ever. In fact, I don't know if we brought it up on another episode. We did during the live Q&A. I think I ribbed you. No, that was when we were done recording. It was before we were recording. I get a lot of messages on Instagram and my inbox every day asking, "Has Todd done that challenge yet? Has Todd done the brew challenge? Has he brewed the 1 week ahead?" And Todd, have you done it yet? I don't remember.
No, I have not.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So this is going to be the only chance at me winning $5. You're going to drag out till December of 2020.
And then I'm going to beat you anyway. It's going to be so disappointing for you. I think that's part of it. It's just, I'm just dreading the disappointment you're going to feel.
That's spoken like a true friend and employer. So yes, Joseph, Todd's rule of thumb is good to follow if you can keep up with a 2-week kind of thing. I'm with James where I think when I float a keg, even if I'm replacing it, usually if I'm replacing it even with the same style, like if I happen to have another keg of kölsch to replace that kölsch, it's a good time to clean out the lines, rinse them all out, get them clean, brew clean bath or powdered beer cleaner bath for your equipment, run it through, flush it through, and start fresh, because you will notice a difference if you keep the same lines and just like, the first pour of the next beer obviously will be different, but then it'll clear out. No, it affects your beer, and you spend all that time and effort brewing good beer, pour it correctly. So thank you for submitting.
It's just gross. It's not sanitary. I mean, you don't want to pour beer with mold growing in your lines.
Or
mold plugs.
People are
moving back and forth inside the line.
People are looking to build up their immunities for coronavirus, man. So maybe that'll do it. That's what my wife should, bringing it back to kombucha, since people don't think I talk about kombucha enough on this show now. The Stroby is looking good. I'm growing a super Stroby, and she was like, "It looks like you're growing coronavirus." I was like, "That's kind of funny." But I agree that it is just gross. It's a science project in your tubing if you don't take care of it. So thank you for submitting the question, Joseph. Moving on.
But there's one more part to that question we need to answer.
Which one is that?
He wanted to know about if he could use the same faucet for all different types of beverages.
Good point. Well, and we kind of remember we had a question from Mark about the V3N, and we kind of discussed that. Yeah, James Faucet, man, what do you think about using a one faucet for multi-purposes of different beverages?
Well, you absolutely can do that, but keep in mind, if you're going to be serving soda or seltzer water, that's a much higher pressure. and you're going to need some kind of flow control faucet to manage the pressure, or it's going to be a nightmare to dispense.
Oh God, yeah, you gotta bring the level down to 10 psi, serve it for a while, bring it back up, I mean, you gotta have a flow control faucet when you're serving soda.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have actually, not to tout CM Becker, but we do have an entry level X1 faucet, and it's competitively priced around what some regular standard faucets are, and that will get you in business with just about any faucet, any beverage you want to dispense.
Yeah.
Which faucet is that?
The X1 flow control.
X1. Okay.
That's been, James, I think your advice is paying off because listeners will sometimes email me their carts that they just purchased on Homebrew Supply or on Keg Connection. A lot of X1s have been going out the door, man. I think that's the gateway.
They work so well. I mean, they really do.
And I say gateway, I mean, that what's so funny is, yes, it is an entry level in regards to the tiers that CM Becker offers, but there are commercial operations have been using X1s and only X1s for years. It's not.
Yep. In fact,
Twin Peaks, right?
That's right. All the Twin Peaks restaurants use our faucets exclusively. So if you go into a Twin Peaks restaurant and look at the faucets behind the bar, those are CM Becker faucets.
You know how I know that, James? Because
you're also the owner.
Because I can always convince my wife to go into Twin Peaks so we can check out the faucets.
Oh, I'm there for the food.
You know what? I can say I've never been in a Twin Peaks in my life. But
I go in there with my wife, and last time we went was in Las Vegas, and I'm like, look at those faucets. Aren't those great faucets?
Okay, that's funny. They just put one in San Marcos, Todd. When you come to town,
we gotta go check out the faucet.
We gotta go check out the faucet.
Product quality assessment.
You want to know why? And not knocking them, and I guarantee you, nobody from corporate of Twin Peaks listens to the show. Their whole shtick, guys, is serving beer at 29 degrees and in frozen muds. But that's why they use the CMB. That I guess, let me spin it around. That speaks to the versatility of the X1 because all the other faucets they used were exploding on them. What was going on?
That's just our whole foundation of the way the faucet's designed is for just first and foremost full on flow control. So that's in every pressure range and flow. It does a lot better job than some of the add-on flow control. Yeah,
and the guy that Blizzard Beer Systems is who does all their installs, and the guy Jimmy that runs that company, that system is just incredible. I've been there. James, have you? No, I've been there with my wife. I get y'all confused sometimes, and seen it, but it's incredible, like the testing they go through and everything else. And he absolutely insists on using CMB faucets. So that's nice.
Yeah, I think, to wrap up this question, using them makes you a believer, ultimately. I think that's what kind of helped Todd transition into that, hey, whenever it came time to decide if you wanted to acquire CM Becker or not, it made it easier because you believed in the products because you used them first as a home brewer and then in the retail space. So yeah, the X1's solid. When my dad and I eventually build out a Keyser, I think I'm going to drop the money to upgrade to the V10. That's
our flagship flow control.
Yeah,
and find a better faucet in the market
because it's going to last it's like a Glock going. They used to do those videos like, oh, look at the Glock going through the cementer, and then the truck running over it. And the V10 is that faucet. It's
pretty bulletproof.
Yeah, it's bulletproof.
He's going to spend the money to do that, James. We might want to check his pockets next week when he's up here.
Hey, yeah, you're right. When I post photos of the build, and you're like, wait a second, we don't have any purchase orders from Josh.
Cool. I need to get a faucet for some photos.
Yeah, that's right, for some photos. Oh, y'all are giving me good ideas.
Oh, you wanted that back?
Yeah, I didn't know you wanted that. Oh no, now y'all are going to frisk me. What? Todd, never mind. Joseph, thank you so much for submitting the question. Moving on, question number 2 came from Liam, who also used the submission form at homebrewhappyhour.com. Liam wrote, hello, Homebrew Happy Hour gang. I love the show and have been listening for a long time. Just joined your Patreon too after the Imperial announcement. Great job. I do have a question about equipment. I have been using the same plastic bucket to ferment in, and I've never used anything for secondary fermentation. In fact, I've never done secondary fermentation. If I upgrade my fermentation vessel to something like the spiked line of conical fermenters, would you recommend I get rid of the bucket altogether in my fermentation process? Or should I still do primary fermentation in the bucket and then transfer to the conical, or even the other way around? I hate getting rid of stuff I paid for, so if I could make use of the bucket, then I'd like to do that. Thanks for taking my question, Liam. Liam, we can relate. We're all cheap, man. We are.
Yeah, the Liam's as cheap as my father, though. I mean, you
get rid of the bucket.
Yeah, you definitely want to ferment in your new fermenter. That's going to work a lot better for the bucket for a lot of different reasons, right, James?
Oh, absolutely. You can do trub dumps with that conical that you can't do with a bucket. You can also pull some yeast off and reuse yeast.
You know where
I can do all the things that are so great about those fermenters that we've talked about a lot on the show.
Yeah, and I was going to tell him we don't have any info on the batch sizes he's brewing. I always make the assumption they're 5-gallon batches because that's a good chunk of our audience, and a good chunk of homebrewers, I think, are still in that 5-gallon range, especially the newer folk. And the Spike for Fletz and the Fletz Plus are phenomenal banes for your buck. And like you said, the Plus specifically, being able to pressurize being able to do the whole process in one vessel is a game changer that I'm looking forward to, hopefully, with my Pop and Eyes operation. Because it is, I mean, I'm not complaining any more than I would on any kind of manual labor, but like fermenting in the bucket, we use the Genesis frequently as at least one of our fermentation vessels. Transferring, we're introducing a lot of variables that could affect the outcome of the finished product when when you're transferring from this vessel to this other vessel. If, one time when I did an ESB transfer, it had a little bit of a cardboard taste that mellowed out, but I know why. It's because I let it splash for the first 35 seconds of the transferring until I caught it and I was like, oh no. And now, when you use a single vessel, you kind of take away a lot of those worries and issues where it all is just being done in one container. Like Todd, and James, actually, James even more, when I go up to headquarters and you're like, hey, try this. And I'm always thinking like, oh, is it the finished beer? No, we're just using the sample valve off of the CF15 from Spike. Mm-hmm. And we've joked about it.
Easy.
And we've joked about it on here. Y'all have basically poured 1 gallons, like not at a time, but you'll pour a full glass. Hey, try this. And it's basically ready to drink.
Yeah, and it'll be carbonated and it'll serve just like coming out of a tap.
Oh, the Dos Equis is the worst. When I kegged that, I filled up 2 kegs and got another 2.5 gallons and it was more than 15 gallons when I was done. So we probably drank 2 gallons of it or more. Testing it.
Which
is fine, but I do want to make Liam feel better about one thing. Buckets. You can always use buckets in brewing. You're not going to waste that bucket. You'll be able to use it for all kinds of things. Sanitizing. You could use for bottling if you do any bottling. I mean, there's lots of things you could do with it. And at some point, you're going to have a beer in that fermenter, and you're going to want to brew another one sooner, and you're going to end up using that bucket again to ferment. I have the nicest fermentation vessel you can buy. That's CF15 you were just talking about, set up to a glycol system. And right now I have 3 beers sitting in plastic buckets at home because my fermenter was full. So you still can use buckets. And in particular, when I use buckets sometimes is when I'm doing an ale. So I almost won't do I just won't do a lager unless I'm using my controlled system fermenter from Spike, but lagers work fine in a bucket. So you can still use your bucket.
Well, you know what? And you kind of read my mind there. I was going to ask James, I was going to assume he maybe never did lagers before. And if he says he's never done secondary, is that not a safe assumption? Do lagers also not necessarily have to have the...
No, you can absolutely secondary a lager.
No, I'm saying he said he's never done secondary. I'm saying, would it be safe to assume then he's probably never lagered, or do you
probably never done a lager either? It's a temperature issue. with
Right.
lagers.
And I've done lagers without my system too. I happen to have you could take a chest freezer and put them in the chest freezer and turn up the temperature. If you got to have a controller on there, of course. You don't want to just plug a chest freezer in, but turn it to where your lagering temperature is, or any kind of fridge. You can still lager without the fancy spike system, and it works fine. It's just
for sure
easier with it. So,
right. Yeah. I was just when I read things. Well, I have been very surprised in the last year of how unpopular secondary fermentation is. So whenever listeners like Liam make a point to say, I've never done secondary, that's so foreign to me only because I don't know the last time. Actually, no, never. My dad and I have never brewed a batch and not transferred to a glass carboy and done a secondary fermentation process. It seems like I'm in the the minority, Todd.
Well, I'm with you. I have never. I don't ever remember brewing a beer and not secondary and not putting it into a secondary vessel, except for, of course, the spike, which you basically do the secondary in the same vessel, if that makes sense, because you got the conical to catch everything. So,
yeah, and that'll be a whole other topic we can do on a whole other show, or maybe I'll do a live call in where listeners can just tell me you're an idiot. Here's why I don't do secondary.
I want to mention one thing while you bring that up, Josh, because I already know why they're going to tell you you're an idiot, because I do it all the time. So what I do with my glass carboy when I do the secondary is I have a tube that I put down there, and I hook the CO2 line to it, and I actually purge it completely of oxygen. So when I'm transferring from my vessel into the secondary, there is no oxygen in that secondary. And that's one way that you can kind of get by that one thing that people worry about, which is oxygenating their beer when they're transferring it over.
That will be one of the many things they use to tell me I'm an idiot. Yes, thank you, Mr. Burns. Liam, that was a great question. Thank you for submitting it. And this is a good time before the final question to remind you, when you submit a question to us and we take it on the show, we do send you a $25 gift card to kegconnection.com or Homebrew Supply. Usually I give you the choice. Sometimes if I don't, just ask. But anyway, check your inbox, Liam. You have an email about that, as well as everyone else, Joseph. And our third question, which comes from Adam, who used the submission form at homebrewhappyhour.com. Adam wrote, "Hello, Joshua and crew. I want to give credit where credit is due and let you know that all the talk about Kölsch has made me a believer. My local brewery has a house Kölsch always on tap that I finally tried, and now I'm hooked. Now, as I say that, I do want to know what you all think about playing around with Kölsch as a base and then using additives or adjuncts to spice it up. I can't help myself as a home brewer, so help me decide what might complement your Kölsch recipe. Thanks for the great content and keep it up." Adam, nothing. I mean, just leave it as it is. James's recipe is perfect. It is great. You don't have to do anything. That's wrapping up this show. Thank y'all for joining.
No, you can actually, that's a good base recipe if you want to switch over to a lager yeast and try a lagering. It won't taste like a Kölsch, but it'll be a real mild. I think you'd like it if you use like Imperial's harvest yeast and try your hand at lagering that recipe. It comes up fairly decent.
Yeah, and you can add things to it as well. I mean, I've had lots of lagers in brew pubs where Kölsches in brew pubs where it's, a cherry Kölsch or whatever they may decide to do to it. And I mean, I'm not a huge fan of a cherry Kölsch, but
or cherry anything.
but yeah, it's a very light, non-assuming beer. It's a great one if you want to add something to it, to maybe a smoked malt or something like that you want to try. Do a little bit different flavor with it. It would certainly work for that.
Yeah. Great for adjuncts if you want to add fruit or if you want to experiment with hops, dry hopping. It's a good base. It's so subtle that you can pretty much do anything to it if you want to experiment a little bit.
We have a listener, and he also comments and tags us on Instagram a bunch. Hops and Grains, I think is his account. He's out of San Antonio. I think he just posted I think he used coffee, just coffee beans in like secondary or dry hopped them maybe, and said it turned out really good. And I know another people have tagged us before in similar things. Coffee seems popular as an additive. I guess this would be a good time too, James, to just clarify, because we do have a lot of people who don't know anything, and I'm talking about myself. Additives and adjuncts in regards to brewing, and an adjunct refers to the grains, right? Or are those words just whatever?
It's just whatever.
Okay.
I think that when you're talking about a basic, over in Germany, they have what's called the Reinheitsgebot, and that means barley, water, yeast, and hops, and that's it.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, I would consider an adjunct anything other than that.
And any part of the process, right? Like, I mean, if you're dry hopping with coffee beans, right?
Yeah. If you're just going to add anything other than the basic beer ingredients, according to the Reinheitsgebot, would be an adjunct.
They would say 9.
They would say 9. Yeah, we are not right now, especially with the new show. I don't see us experimenting a whole lot, because part of the whole show is to have recipes that we can share with people, and that they're able to just click, and if they want to buy it, they can buy it, or if they just want to see the bill, they can get the ingredients and build it. So experimentation, Todd and I were talking about the other day on the phone, where that is not my thing. God bless people like you, James, and Joe, who give me the recipes, because when I get complimented about the way the beer turns out, I take all the credit. And
that's perfectly fine.
I know you're okay with it because you're a nice person. I just mean, when I get to building recipes, the pretentiousness is just getting turned way up.
Oh gosh.
Can you imagine?
We shouldn't allow him to do that.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to experience adjuncts, I would suggest going to a homebrew con at least once in your lifetime and go to club night, because man, oh man, I actually had a beer, clam beer. Wrap your head around that. That's a super adjunct, I would call.
And do you remember it was like an extremely cold mash. What was this? It was a brown ale? Or do you remember that one where?
Yeah, it was a cold mash brown ale, I believe.
That actually didn't turn out that bad.
It was good. It was really good.
But what was it, like 2.5% or something? I mean, it was below near beer, or what?
It was their session beer, so it was like 2.5%.
It was low. I remember that and being like, man, it still tastes good. Like,
there's one that was like breakfast beer was bacon and
and donuts and
bacon and pancakes or something, and they mixed 2 beers together to make it. And that's from Pico Brew. What's her Annie from Pico Brew. She's the one that does that every year.
Chicken and Waffles was the name.
Chicken and Waffles. Thank you. God, I was way off.
Annie.
But y'all remember the beer, the clam beer, the oyster beer.
I don't remember, but here's what's so funny about our conversation now is that this is very typical of post club night. We're like, do you kind of remember that beer at that club? It was a style. We drank it.
Yeah, and that didn't happen, dude. That didn't happen. Yeah, that's what the other person said.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't remember that at all.
I don't remember that at all. Yeah, Todd took the picture. The guy dressed up as a woman in an alien costume. Do you not know what I'm talking about?
I'm looking through my phone. Oh, wow. I do have a picture of that.
Well, hey, by the way, happy belated birthday, Mr. Burns.
Thank you.
On your birthday, I shared photos of you with everyone in the podcast. Like, I shared a photo of you and James, you and me, you and Joe. And there was one I didn't share just because I didn't want to have to make things awkward. But there was a club night photo that if you ever see me at HomebrewCon, listeners, just ask for me to show you the photo, and I'll show it to you. It'll be our little secret. But I
don't think I've ever taken a photo that you couldn't show.
Oh no, I know, but maybe not show to tens of thousands or tens of dozens of people. Okay.
Yeah.
But,
see, I don't think that would bother Todd in the least.
I know it wouldn't, but it's not.
What's crazy is when you go on YouTube just to look at club night videos, and there's Todd.
Oh, yeah.
Easy to pick out.
Oh, yeah. That's why everybody remembers him. That's what you brought up Annie, and I was going to bring up the bitterness, but of not ever being remembered. If she's here at HomebrewCon this year, I'm gonna have my GoPro attached to my chest, walk up to her, Annie, it's good to see you, and she'll reach out her hand and go, I'm Annie Johnson.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah. And then Todd will walk up behind me, Todd Burns. Burns. Todd Wynn Burns. Oh my goodness, from Blanket, Texas.
She never remembers my middle name. That's not fair.
Yeah, you went to, yeah, she's going to tell you what high school you went to, how long you've been married, all these details that y'all brought up in small talk, and she'll introduce herself to me. James, I don't even know if she remembers you. She has to because you're 19 feet tall.
I don't think I think I get the same thing. I get, oh, hi, nice to meet you. You know.
Yeah, we will, and I will, this will be saved for small talk in the future. Google Pico Brew is up for sale. It'll be very interesting to see if they keep, if they get sold, if they keep the same team, if all of our friends from Pico Brew are there at HomebrewCon, or if they even show up at all, or if they just send the suits. I don't know. It'll be an interesting HomebrewCon.
Send the suits.
Send the suits. But anyways, guys, that wraps up this week's show. I do appreciate y'all taking the time to do this with me this week. I'm looking forward to when I'm up there Monday, Tuesday. Todd, we have a huge project.
We have a lot of work to do.
We have a lot of work to do, but I'm excited to get it done, to get it all edited together, to publish it, to promote it. We have exciting things coming down the line through Homebrew Happy Hour, but for KOLSCH and Homebrew Supply. It's a lot of fun coming up. So, gentlemen, thank you again for joining me, and I will see y'all soon.
Thanks.
See ya.
And that will do it for this episode of the Homebrew Happy Hour. If you have a question you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, visit homebrewhappyhour.com and click on the Submit a Question link at the top of the page, or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. Thank you to our show sponsor, Spike Brewing Equipment, for supporting us and the home brewing community. Learn more about their incredible equipment at spikebrewing.com/homebrew happy hour and make the most of your brew day. On behalf of Todd Burns, James Carlson, and the Pearl Media Network, I'm Joshua Stubing. Thank you for listening.
This program is made possible by the checkbook of Mr. Todd Burns and by contributions to our newly launched Patreon by viewers like you. Visit patreon.com/homebrew happy hour and join our community. Thank you.